A secret audio recording has exposed how Texas Republican leaders weaponize state power to sabotage clean energy finance, and the economic risks this creates extend far beyond Texas borders. In newly surfaced audio, Assistant Attorney General Brent Webster reveals a coordinated campaign by Governor Greg Abbott, Attorney General Ken Paxton, and other top Republicans to systematically target major banks supporting clean energy. The recording exposes how they used obscure Texas laws to punish financial institutions aligned with global climate goals. Their primary target was the Net Zero Banking Alliance, a global coalition of over 100 banks committed to shifting investments away from fossil fuels. Rather than engage in public debate or propose legislation, Texas officials chose coercion through legal intimidation. Webster details a sophisticated pressure campaign designed to force banks like Wells Fargo and BlackRock into compliance. The core threat was exclusion from Texas's municipal bond market, the critical financing mechanism that cities and school districts use to fund roads, schools, and essential infrastructure. This market represents billions in contracts that banks couldn't afford to lose. But the arsenal went deeper. Officials weaponized antitrust laws, threatening costly lawsuits and forcing banks to endure subpoenas and depositions. The message was unmistakable: abandon your climate commitments or face legal warfare designed to drain resources and damage reputations. Significantly, Webster acknowledges that many within the Attorney General's office warned this strategy could backfire financially, potentially damaging Texas's own economic interests. Despite these internal concerns, the pressure campaign proceeded anyway, prioritizing fossil fuel protection over economic prudence. The strategy succeeded exactly as intended. Banks began systematically withdrawing from the Net Zero Banking Alliance. These weren't decisions driven by financial analysis or market conditions. They were direct responses to government coercion. Major financial institutions, facing the prospect of losing access to Texas markets, chose compliance over climate commitments. This represents a fundamental distortion of market forces. Instead of allowing financial institutions to make investment decisions based on risk assessment and long-term value creation, Texas officials used government power to artificially prop up fossil fuel interests while blocking natural market transitions. The consequences extend far beyond Texas borders. When major banks are forced to abandon clean energy commitments, it affects investment flows nationwide, potentially translating into higher utility costs for consumers as clean energy projects struggle to secure financing. For working and middle-class Americans, the impact is particularly severe. Retirement funds and 401k plans heavily invested in these major banks now face increased portfolio risk. If banks are forced to maintain higher exposure to fossil fuel assets while being blocked from diversifying into clean energy, it amplifies financial vulnerability for millions of American workers and retirees. Poor and working-class communities are likely to face higher utility costs and reduced infrastructure investment as financial institutions withdraw from Texas markets to avoid legal entanglements. Financial experts are increasingly warning about the potential for a fossil fuel asset bubble similar to the 2008 housing crisis. If global demand for oil and gas continues declining while Texas forces continued heavy investment in these sectors, it could trigger massive asset devaluations. When that bubble bursts, investors and taxpayers will be left holding worthless assets. The precedent this sets is equally dangerous. If Texas succeeds in using legal intimidation to force banks away from climate commitments, other red states will likely follow suit. This could create a chilling effect on bank disclosures and climate transparency, undermining U.S. climate pledges and creating a patchwork of politicized legal actions against private sector sustainability efforts. Most likely, more banks will continue exiting climate tax to preserve access to Texas markets, weakening global net zero efforts. In the best-case scenario, legal challenges or shareholder backlash could force policy reversals or judicial intervention. But the worst case involves long-term economic fallout as climate-aligned investors abandon fossil-heavy states entirely, stranding local assets and creating regional economic isolation. What this leak ultimately reveals is that Texas leaders prioritized oil industry loyalty over financial stability. The result may be short-term political wins, but long-term economic isolation. Instead of allowing natural market transitions toward clean energy, they used government power to artificially prop up a declining industry. This isn't just a climate story or a Texas story. It's a warning about what happens when political ideology overrides economic reality and how government coercion can distort markets in ways that ultimately harm the very people it claims to protect. This is Clarity AI News. here to help you see what's real, not just what's loud. Please remember to like and subscribe below, and thank you for watching.